Yeah, just help yourself whenever you get ready. You ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Essa Steering Committee for our December meeting. We're glad that you're here, and I want to welcome all of the committee members, and especially Emma. We have missed you, and we are super glad that you're back joining us, and we welcome all comments, and we are looking forward to a productive meeting this morning. Our first order of business is our minutes from last time. Does anyone have any comments or additions to the minutes? Okay. If not, then I need a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. All right, our items for discussion, the first one is Ms. Kaufman is going to give us some information about the informational documents.
Good morning. Deborah Kaufman, Assistant Commissioner of Public School Accountability. We need to celebrate. Essa is officially 4 years old as of yesterday. So what I presented to you laying on your desk is a letter it's a joint letter that was sent to the Education Committee at the federal level that just basically outlines the joint commitment and approval of what's going on in our states in regard to Essa. What I also wanted to share with you is that our office has been reaching out to our congressmen to kind of give them an update of where Arkansas is specifically. Last week, Aaron Franks and I went to Hot Springs to meet with Congressman Bruce Westerman and spent a little over an hour going over our Essa plan and the progress that we're making. And of course, his office, he and his office has said anything we need, please reach out and let them know. They were very supportive, very great questions. We had a wonderful conversation. Yesterday, we Zoomed with Congressman Rick Crawford and his staff to do the same thing, go over where we are, answer any questions. He also offered any support that we need. We did talk to both of them about future amendments, and they both were just let us know what you need, keep us informed. And so Aaron will continue that conversation with them. This afternoon, we're Zooming with Congressman John Boozman's office to go over that, and Aaron is working on a schedule with the other three congressmen to set up a time when we can talk with them.
Okay.
So a different group that we've reached out to in the past. So what I wanted to do this morning was, first of all, just remind the committee and all of our viewing audience that we have posted a large group of informational documents on our Essa Informational Documents webpage, and that's where all of those one-pagers, two-pagers that briefly explain different components or questions that people have asked about Essa and how it really works, how it applies to school districts. That's also the page where all of our statistical information is posted each year, the business rules for how Essa school index is calculated. So I encourage you to go there. We have a new document this year that's kind of following the history of letter grades. So you can look back and say historically what's been happening with our schools in letter grades. You can, from our Essa webpage, also access our Schools on the Move. And so our Schools on the Move is just a running account of our school districts that have made just remarkable progress, as noted in our accountability system. We have school districts that have raised, numerous schools raised a letter grade. We had several that raised 2 letter grades. That's pretty awesome. But we have school districts that raised, that have growth scores that are 2 standard deviations above the mean. And when you go back into our statistical report, you see that That is amazing. And that just tells you the quality of work that's going on, the quality of learning that's going on in those schools. So our communications team has put together a communication plan, and on our social media is putting out weekly notices about these schools that have done such remarkable work. So if you see any of those, if you're following the Department of Ed or DESE on your social media, please like those and share them with others. And we want to really get the word out about the great work that our schools are doing. What I think is really remarkable about Essa, and what's really different with Essa from No Child Left Behind. If you recall, No Child Left Behind, we had no opportunity to talk about schools doing well. We only talked about schools that were in decline, and that's all we talked about. You're in school improvement year 10. You know, we never talked about the schools that were doing amazing things. And we knew, as all states, I believe now, as a result of how Essa was written, that if states could write their own accountability systems, and if we could pay more attention to the schools that are doing things right, that other people would look to them to replicate those practices and processes. So that's what we're actually seeing as a result of Essa. So as we celebrate our 4 years under the Every Student Succeeds Act, we are seeing that shift in the culture of accountability pay dividends. And we see that in our actual schools and in the work that our students are doing. So we really want to celebrate that. So I just want to pause briefly and ask you, as we think about informational documents, I want to share with you some that we're working on, and this slide is linked for you on your agenda. It may help you to see a little better. But while we have a lot of documents on the informational documents page, I just wanted to kind of share with you the thinking that we're doing behind the scenes and the work that we're working on. We're never satisfied that we have enough out there and we can rest. We're always trying to think about what can we do to help serve our districts. So the first thing that we did is kind of think through the questions. What questions should we be asking? And so one of the questions that we get quite a bit is, how is the Essa School Index calculated? And if you look across, what I'm going to say to you is, if it's in black font, it is already there. It's already available. If it's in red, it's something that we're working on. So when I asked the question about how do we calculate the Essa School Index, the first thing that we did was to write business rules that we could put out for the public. You see that under the column General Information. We put that on the Informational Documents webpage. It's updated every year. We ask for feedback each time that we put those general business rules out. And the information, the questions that we get from schools and patrons, stakeholders of all sorts, is then taken into account to clarify the information. It's usually, people aren't asking us to change our accountability system, they're asking to make it crystal clear so that they too can take the data and replicate and get the same score. And that's what a really good accountability system allows you to do. Just to give people quick information that may not want to read that lengthy business rule document, they just want to know kind of the highlights. We always think about what a quick overview might look like, and those are those informational documents, those 1 and 2 pagers. All of those 1 and 2 pagers are also, a good majority of them are linked to the Essa School Index. So if you're on the school growth, the student growth page, that 1 or 2 pager is linked there. And so as our patrons are looking at the Essa School Index, they don't have to go back out and try to find the informational documents. They're linked on the page where you might be thinking about that topic. Something that we're working on that's very detailed is a technical procedures manual. And so I like to think about that technical procedures manual as, if Dr. Arola wins the lottery, and decides to not come to work tomorrow, how do we carry on without her? And so in this document, we're up to 200 or 300 pages right now, but it gives all of the itty-bitty details behind the scenes. The code that's written to run everything, all of the little decisions that we have to make to ensure quality and accuracy are all recorded in this procedures manual. The procedures manual, some states choose not to publish this. Ours isn't yet ready enough to put out for the public, but it's never a finished document. It's always something that you're working on. You're always getting better and better and better and unpacking. And in our conversations with other states, we realize that we are in the very minute details, which is comforting to me, because that means that we have such transparency and such consistency in our accountability system that we're down to the very minute details to make sure that we're answering those correctly every time. So our goal is to make that technical procedures manual available to the public, and by all means, if you feel the need to go to sleep quickly, it will be the document you'll want to read. But we do want to make it available for the people who like to geek out on that kind of information. So our second question is, how are data collected and reported for the school report card? And as you recall, in the Essa School Index, you get to set how you're going to hold schools accountable. Remember, we give weights. We exclude certain students from the calculation because they're highly mobile or different situations within that, and that's all detailed in the business rules. But when you get to the school report card, you report all the data, and you don't report it with any weights or no extra packaging. It's just laid out. And in that report card, there are numerous modules. So that report card right now comes with the quick overview documents you see there, definitions, FAQ, module descriptions. Those are the hover overs that are on each of the modules. And we're working on some additional documents to bring more information to that school report card. I can give you some news hot off the press. We've always released our school report card on April 15th as required under state law. We will, by magic of Arjit Sarkar and his team, we will be able to release our school report card in January. It will not be complete. We will not have all of the data for every one of the 17 modules, but we have Arjit has built in a method to show the public which modules are complete with data and which ones have partial data. We have about 95%, 98% of our data available now to go into our report card, but we have historically had to wait for that last 2, 3, 4, 5%. That some of it we don't even get until end of February, early March. So we asked ourselves that question: why are we waiting? Why don't we put out what we have and let the public know that the rest will be coming as soon as it's available, and we'll have everything finalized by April 15th. So that way the data can start being used instead of people waiting. So be watching for commissioner memos. We're trying to get it all put together right now. We're working on it very hard, but it will release sometime in January.
Good. Congratulations. That's a lot of work.
What's that old saying, if the creeks don't rise?
Yeah.
So we just really want to celebrate that.
Yes.
And celebrate the work that our team is doing to make that happen. So it's just really about asking yourself different questions. Why not?
Yeah.
And so I think you've seen that repeated over and over. So we want to write some more supporting documents for people that really want to understand our report card and learn to use it more effectively. Third question, how are data reported for each school? Of course, that is our annual school report card, is more of our detailed report that's available each year. Our annual Essa School Index is the general information that's pretty specific only to our accountability system. And then the quick overview is that annual school rating that gives you the one-page quick view. So if we think about our audience for accountability information, it's all of the stakeholders in Arkansas. And so we have to ask ourselves these questions. What if I just want to know some quick information? So you can go to our annual school rating tab, pull that up, see the letter grade, look at the score for all students and the score for each subgroup, and you quickly can begin asking questions about what is equitable access for students. What's the equitable opportunities for students? Are they receiving an equitable education in this school? Then if I want to dig deeper, I go into the Essa School Index, and I can look to learn about achievement, about growth, about graduation rate, about school quality indicators. And then if I want to open up the full school report card, I can look at everything. It practically lays our schools bare. It goes into expenditures and teacher quality and retention and alternative assessments, and there's a module for everyone. Does the Essa School Index score reflect technical quality? And that's what we're always asking ourselves is, are we confident? Can we support the trust that our stakeholders have put in us with our accountability system? And the way that we do that is through our annual Essa School statistics report that's on Informational Documents. Every year we put out a detailed PowerPoint and PDF that give the statistics for elementary, middle, and high schools in all of the indicators on our Essa School Index. That lays it out for everyone to see, to compare from previous years about how well we're improving. Are we improving? In that document, one of the things that I'm always looking for is our 5% cut score. You know, under Essa, we're required to identify schools that are under the 5% cut score. And so mathematically, we have to identify 41 schools every 3 years. But what I'm interested in is if we're really improving, that cut score should be steadily moving up. So if you go in and look at our statistical report, you see that in elementary and middle, it's doing exactly that. Our 5% cut score is steadily going up, not in high school. So we have to come back and ask ourselves a question about high school. What do we need to do differently? What different questions do we need to ask? And so we'll talk about that a little more at the end of today's presentation. So a couple of things that we're working on is I asked the question, well, we ask our schools to do a report to the public each year. So why don't we do that? And so look forward to that. We're putting that together. We're planning an accountability report to the public. We feel like we put everything out there all the time, but an opportunity to really get out there and talk about it, all the details, kind of unpack it like we ask our schools to do. Another piece that we're working on is what we would call a validity report, and that is just really putting together all of the research that's been done. I have to really brag on Dr. Arola's team at OIE. At our last TAC meeting, one of our TAC members said to Denise that you can't run the data anymore. She's run it from every direction. She's made charts that I don't even know what kind of charts they are, but she's looked at it from every angle to see that we're doing the right thing. And our TAC has said, we are confident. You don't have to keep running. You can't run a different report. You've run every one that we know how to run. So I think that just speaks to the work that we're doing. But a validity report would put all of those tests that she's run on our system, kind of compile that and put that out there for researchers to look at, to say, wow, they really are taking a look at their accountability system from every angle. And finally, we want to know at the division, has DESE provided the appropriate support for improvement? And I told you what we were looking at, but one of the things that I think is a testament to that is Schools on the Move Toward Excellence that we talked about. That's out on our website and in our social media campaign. What we're putting out on our parents' webpage and our public school accountability webpage of just the general information, the supports that we're providing. Our district support team is out working with great people from all over this agency to meet the needs of our schools, the specific needs. Right now, our team is reviewing all of the district support plans that have been submitted, making their list of which district's going to need a certain kind of support so that it can be very customized. In red on the detailed column, what you'll see is that we are going through a self-evaluation process, one that is provided by the U.S. Department of Ed, and one that is provided by one of our partners at the Center for Assessment. And we're going through those simultaneously to make sure that we've not left any gap, left any question that we haven't answered. And these self-assessments require us to go through and, did we think about it that way? Do we have supporting documents to say that we did that? We talked about it, but maybe we never wrote it down, whatever that is. So as you look through that, is there a question we've left unasked? Is there a document that we need to put on our to-do list? Now that you've had 4 years of Essa, what feedback can you give me today? And if you can't give it to me today, you can always email it to me. But what feedback can you give us about what we need to think about, consider, and do to better inform our public?
We'll start, Melinda, do you have anything that you, okay. Melissa?
I think you, some of the things that I've had teachers and you know, stakeholders in my area talk about were really just those, the specific technical, how we're calculating, and that's kind of out there, but you already spoke about the one that was quick, so I think that's already been answered for me.
Okay, Senator English?
Well, thank you. It's overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot of information, but I think what is particularly good, I don't know that in the past we've been able to justify all the things that we're doing. So I really appreciate it. And I like the fact that you've got the, almost like the procedures manual, which so many businesses have to do, is what happens if somebody isn't, if Stacy Smith doesn't show up tomorrow, what happens? What does she do? How do you do what she's doing? And I particularly like that. And I think all the information, sometimes it's probably overwhelming to people, but I think having all that information out there so folks can look at their school systems to see how they're doing, what they're doing.
Yes, yes. Amen.
The one thing that came to my mind is how we loop students into this, as far as the investment of students. So if we were to have perhaps the information is synthesized in a way that's student-friendly, or having teachers be able to have conversations with the students about, here's how our school ranked this year, what do you think changed from last year? So really just that investment in students and that piece tied along with it, I think would be a great addition to what y'all are already doing.
That's great.
That's a good idea, yes. Ms. Flowers?
Always get the information that the great transparency, that just information on top of information. So everything's there that's needed.
Thank you.
I have a little longer list. I think it's important after 4 years to take a deep breath and appreciate all the work you all have done. this is so far above what we've had in the past.
Yes.
And you're to be commended for leading that charge. So I want to give that appreciation first. I think also as you look inward and you self-evaluate, I feel in terms of transparency, that's an outstanding thing to do. We're asking schools for transparency and to be evaluated, so I appreciate that. My only question, and you may have answered this and I missed it, you talk about rolling out those report cards in January. Is there an advantage to that? And I know you said it's a little bit earlier so that people can model what's working. Are there other advantages there? Secondly to that, because you don't have quite all of the data, is there the potential that there's enough outstanding data to change the report card? And do you anticipate challenges there?
So any of the data that would be released in January would not change. The only information that would be added in later months is data that we just flat out don't have. Like, for example, the number of hours that a school board member, number of hours of professional development a school board member received in 2019. That doesn't get submitted in the cycle, I believe, until cycle 6. So we don't even get that, 5 or 6, whatever the number is, till end of February. So that number has no relation or bearing to any of the other data that's already going to be available.
Thank you.
But I like the idea of really thinking through what are those advantages, because that's going to help us do a good communication.
The thing that I think that I am most impressed with is when I look at that document that you've got for us to kind of let us know where your transparency is, I see a lot of red. And you said that the red is not, that, you know, it's under development, things that you're thinking about. You know, in the past, you know, as a state, over the years in education, we have been really bad about putting something down on paper and saying, this is what we're going to stick with for the next 5 years, and this is how it's going to be. We're not been open to change and open to the plan to check, which is the foundation of our Essa plan. And to me, that speaks to that we're, as a department, we're doing the same thing that we're asking schools to do, that we're constantly self-evaluating, that we're constantly looking at how can we do this better, how, you know, what we've done up to this point has been good, but how can we be better? And so I am, as a teacher, former teacher, thoroughly impressed with that we realize that we haven't gotten there yet, that we can always get better. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, and as always, it's been a huge undertaking, but
Yeah, sure,
it is
yeah.
certainly the work of so many people that don't ever get to stand up here and hear you praise them. So I will pass all of that
Okay.
along. What I would encourage you to do is to kind of go back and look at this slide and think about this planning tool, and think about if something comes up and you think, oh, wow, you know, if you did this, then that's certainly something that we want to add to. And we do look at this as a fluid document, in that if we're working along and that white paper that we are planning is not the right way to go when we get there, we feel comfortable to change that. So this is our best plan today, but somebody smarter may have a better idea tomorrow, and so we're open to it. So thank you. And Dr. Boyd is going to come up and talk to you a little bit about what we're doing specifically for parents.
Okay.
Good morning, Alexandra Boyd, School Performance. So on our webpage, you can see we have a tab that goes across that red bar that's specifically for parents. And if you could click on that link for me, that would be great. So in this tab, we've tried to provide a number of resources for parents to help them answer several questions. So when you click on the link, this is what you get. You get the parents page. There's an introductory about family and community engagement. It gives you what our commitment is and then what our objective is regarding family and community engagement. Then we have a number of videos there that talk about our family and community engagement framework, essentials, and toolkit. If you could slow down, yeah. Then we have a number of icons that are things that are in various places throughout our website, but we thought they were important to parents, so we wanted to highlight them by giving them a little button on this family and community engagement page. If you could click on that first icon that says framework and toolkit. So this takes you to a Google site that Chelsea Moore and Kim Wright, who are in charge of family and community engagement, created for, and in collaboration with a lot of stakeholders. So you can see in this toolkit, it gives you a bunch of resources, and there's several ways to get to them. But it outlines all the essentials for family and community engagement. I believe there are 6. And then under each essential, there are ideas based on which audience you're trying to target. If it's students, families, community members, schools, districts, and then of course the state agency. And so you can look at these in several different ways. And then another fun fact is that it's a Google site, so you could use Google Translator if you need it in a different language. And then it asks for feedback on every page. So if there is something that people want done better or differently, they can submit that. And then also in the toolkit, we have a list of resources. And so if a person would like to submit a resource to be housed or highlighted on our toolkit site, then they can do that here as well. So if you could scroll back up. So these essential PDF documents, we also have them translated into Spanish. And so they will be posted, so it's a little bit better than using Google Translator. We actually had a Spanish-speaking person to translate the documents, so they're a little bit more friendly there. So you can go back to the family page. Keep scrolling down. We have information here as a parent guide to state to the report cards, and then we also have links to those one-pagers about the Essa index score there for parents. And then we have our information for contact if they would want to reach out to us. So y'all have any questions about the resources that we've tried to put in one place to make all of this information we have more parent-friendly?
So anyone have a question for Dr. Boyd? I just have one quick question. How, it's on the webpage, and I know that once you get there, it's easy access, but how are you pushing out the information directly to parents that it is on the webpage and it is available?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So we have a social media campaign for family and community engagement. When the toolkit was launched back in August, the commissioner did a video that we put on social media. And then after that, about once a week, we would have an update with someone having a video or highlighting a specific part of something that's on the family and community engagement page. We are monitoring the metrics for the toolkit, the essentials and toolkit, and I can't remember the numbers, but I know that the contacts, not only did they greatly increase after the launch, but the amount of time that people were spending on the page increased as well.
Okay, good. This might be something that Melinda might be able to speak to better than I can, but somehow or another maybe getting parent-teacher organizations involved in this, pushing it out, because, I know we as educators and people that are concerned with education follow your social media account, but not every parent in the state will follow that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So we are meeting monthly with the facilitators and coordinators at the schools and districts. We're providing a monthly Zoom for them to collaborate. So I'll definitely shop that idea to them at our next monthly meeting to help us do that work.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else have a question or a comment?
Well, I would like to, our organization did share the information when it came out, and we were actually on one of the workforces to develop, after they decided what they wanted to do, how it was going to be organized, as to whether it would be choose your essential and then your group, or choose your group and then your essential, that sort of thing. So anytime that we're able to get stuff like that, we do share it on our Facebook page. And I've also had a meeting with Miss Wright, I believe it's about a month ago, about starting to talk about some things that we can do to work together.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Something that just popped in my mind was, as far as the videos, is it possible to link those videos in parent newsletters via email, so those parents who are not on social media but do check emails for progress reports or updates from schools can possibly see them?
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll shop that around too. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Boyd.
Thank you.
All right.
be next.
I think you're
no, not
next.
me.
I think you're up next on
it's-
advisory groups.
Actually, it says my name. Oh no, I am next. I got it. All right. So, thank you. Sorry about that. So if you go to the next slide. So we met, the Essa Accountability Advisory Team met on November 13th, and here are just some summary notes from our meeting. We gave them an update on the highlights that we have in the Schools on the Move Towards Excellence, where we highlighted those schools that increased by 2 letter grades. And I just want to point out that not only are they listed on that page, but we also reached out to those schools and asked them how they got these improvements. And so they submitted responses, and we have those documented there on that link. Then we also went over the annual rating summary, so the difference between A's and B's from 18 to 19. And then Dr. Arola provided us with an overview of some validity analyses that she's conducting. And then we had a discussion about what are the misconceptions in the field, and then how can we as an agency help to combat those misconceptions. That discussion was very rich. And they came up with some great ideas that my office will be working on shortly. So one thing is that the public does not seem to understand why the letter grade cut scores are what they are. So, the Essa index will give you a score, and then we use those scores to assign letter grades. And so we always tell people we did this extensive standard setting process. I'm sure many of you were a part of that process. But if you weren't there, then you don't really know how it happened, and it could seem kind of ambiguous to you. So we're gonna work on a short video and text description of what that lengthy and extensive process was, the different types of stakeholders it included, to help make the idea of the letter grade cut scores be a little bit more tangible and real to the public for those who didn't participate in the standard setting process. Then they're helping people understand growth scores. That's something that we're always working on. And we discussed this, and we think we're going to provide some examples of what students who are not meeting growth, what that looks like, what it looks like when they are meeting growth, and then what it looks like when they're exceeding growth, to just give some examples, again, just tangible examples to help people kind of understand what that growth score is really conveying. And then we talked to them about what kind of connections they were making with informing interventions and support. So most of the people on our accountability advisory team are more of the data people. And we asked them, what's going on between the data team and the curriculum instruction team as far as making the connections between what the data says to inform practices. And I think some of the districts that gave some good examples were that, we get the growth score at the school level, So if they're seeing increased achievement and growth in a school building that's using a certain set of interventions, then they'll look to other school buildings and see if those interventions could or should be used in those buildings. So just trying to make that connection of, well, this is working for these kids, could it possibly work for these kids, and whether or not the district should try that in the different buildings. And then, of course, they asked for individual student Essa index reports to help inform their practice more. And I know that we are working on providing the big missing piece that districts and schools don't have yet is the individual student growth score. So that's something that we're working on, trying to figure out how to provide to schools and districts. And once they have that piece, and they would pretty much have everything that they needed to calculate an individual student Essa index score. So y'all have any questions about that?
Anyone over here have questions? Over here? Questions? Well, you must be doing an excellent job.
Well, we're getting really great feedback from the team, and I'm really happy that it's helping to push our work forward. So the next slide we can actually skip because I already did the family and community engagement. And then the next thing, I believe JJ Walker is going to come talk to you about this.
Good morning, I'm JJ Walker. I work in the Student Assessment Unit upstairs on the 3rd floor. And Ms. Newton, I would like to remind you that once a teacher, always a teacher.
There you
You're
go.
never a former teacher.
That's right.
We can go into teacher mode really quick.
That's
We
right.
retired teachers. So I'm representing Rachel Horn today. She usually comes to speak to you at the planning meeting. They're in a meeting today. I wanted to tell you about 2 things. One thing you have on a slide, we wanted to let y'all know that in the spirit of true collaboration, that 3 different units have come together, and we've actually been meeting for quite a while, but this is kind of the latest focus that we have. Research and technology, accountability, and a lot of people in our unit, student assessment, have all come together for the purpose of putting together a PLC for school principals to know better how to use data to drive instruction. We all know that, good leadership has a great influence on the school, and so our goal is to equip leaders in the school, leaders in the district, to know how to analyze data, read data, teach their teachers about data, so that in turn it helps the students, and once again we can transform Arkansas. So to do that, we're putting together, we've narrowed it down to four areas: time management, student data literacy, classroom walkthroughs, and teacher data literacy. I'm totally convinced that teachers will use data if they know how to analyze it and if they know how to use it. And for some people, it comes very naturally. For others, it doesn't. And I'm an ELA girl, and my world was never numbers, but I can proudly stand before you today and say I am a data nerd. I love looking at data, and so if I can do it, I know anybody can do it. So we have put together, we're putting together 4 different videos that we're pulling experts from across the state. It's not us, so we're letting other administrators from across the state kind of give their input, and we're doing videos of them and how they use it. And what we would like is for administrators to view it. We're going to put it out there for them to view. Then we're going to have a Q&A for them to call, so they can watch it, kind of gather their questions, and then we'll have a live Q&A for them to call and ask questions. So hopefully we'll build that capacity across the state. So we're starting with these for this year. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. Any questions?
So all of these dates would be
The Q&A.
webinar type.
Okay. We'll put them out. We'll actually release the videos or send it to them days before, give them some time to look at it. We have used that process in training from our office and training our DTCs the last couple of years, the last year, where we recorded a video, we put it out there for them to view at their leisure, and then we have a specific date that they log in and we go through and they can ask questions, and it's worked really, really well. And they can view the video however many times. So, any other questions?
I think this is an excellent idea to be able to get, we concentrate on in the school buildings, having PLCs for teachers to work together to improve student performance, but sometimes the principals get left out in the cold and they don't have someone to collaborate with, and so this is an excellent idea to, and so many times they get the data, but then how do I use that to impact my students? And so this is going to give them some tools and some people that they can use to sound ideas off of. So I think this is a great idea.
Thank you.
Very pleased.
I'll take that back.
Any other comments or questions?
And this will be generalized for every assessment or any assessment? that they're
Any.
doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this would be K-12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Any others?
Anything else? Ina?
Just clarification, if it's K-12, is the strategies going to be kind of categorized per elementary, high school?
Could be.
summer?
The people that we have already kind of targeted or kind of across the board. So they bring that expertise from all levels
Okay.
into their discussion.
So one video would apply to all levels?
Right.
Okay.
Anything else?
The second thing, I don't have a slide for it, but the second thing I wanted to bring to your attention is that we have become part of the process for, that our accountability test is ACT Aspire for grades 3-10. And you also know that we give the test in the 5 areas. And in the last 4 years that we've given the test, the writing component has been a standalone component. The students go to take the writing test, they have one prompt. They write based on that prompt. Or type based on that prompt. They have 45 minutes to create their answer, hit send, and off it goes. So it's based on that one prompt. We have talked with Aspire many times about how we felt like there was a better way to assess writing, and we are now becoming part of a writing pilot, writing field test, whatever you want to call it. We are field testing approximately a set of students per grade, 3rd through 10th, on their new writing form that they're putting together. That writing pilot, it will work like this. Whenever they do change the test, a student will go in, sit at the computer, eventually, this is how it will eventually work. Student will go in, sit at the computer, and they will have one of 2 prompts. So it's not just going to be one prompt. Now, they won't have to write to both prompts, but it'll be a chance of getting one of 2 types of prompts, 2 different modes, okay? And then it will be text dependent. Before, it's just been write a story about blah, 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 or your best friend, whatever. It's just been from a 1-sentence prompt or a paragraph prompt. This will be a text dependent, evidence-based type writing assessment. So it's really something more along the lines of what our teachers are doing in the classroom and what we want our teachers to do in the classroom, with it more text-dependent, evidence-based writing. They'll still only have one writing assessment, one prompt, but it'll be more text-based, more evidence-based. We're doing that field test, being a part of that field test in February. So we have grades from across the state.
So will it be every student in grades 3 through 10 participate? How is it gonna?
It's a small sampling from each grade.
Okay. All right. When are you thinking that this new writing
Operational.
would be?
My guess would be 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
But I just wanted to tell you that was on the radar.
Okay. Any questions about that? Can you give me a little bit, an update on the ACT Aspire interim assessments? How is that going this year?
How's it going this year?
Mm-hmm.
I think our DTCs are doing an excellent job of making it work. We have had some difficulty that Ms. Smith might like to speak to you.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So ACT changed their platform. They had a corporate change, and so it moved us from one portal to another portal, and we have had some issues with the portal. The portal was set up really for summative assessments. It's the same portal that states that use PARC use. However, it wasn't set up for interim and periodic assessments that we were used to having with ACT Aspire. And so the upload of files has been a struggle. We are having ongoing conversations. We have weekly conversations with ACT about finding a fix. We had a conversation this morning with some higher ups from ACT, basically saying this has caused some struggles for interim use. In some places, if you do not have a DTC, so a district testing coordinator, who is very highly skilled in Excel, it has been very difficult to upload the mass number of assessments that we have for interim assessments. We have been fortunate that our summative assessment has these interim pieces that we can provide to schools. Not all of them use it, but the schools that have used it in the past, this year, they're struggling.
Okay.
It is a real issue, and it's something that we are aware of, and we're communicating with schools. But district testing coordinators' times for interim assessments have substantially, it's 10 times what it was. So it is an issue. They are providing us a fix. The fix, though, will not be ready until the summative assessment. And so for periodics and interims this year, unless they are highly skilled in Excel, it takes a long time to get it set up. So it's an issue.
So it's probably not going to get better this year, but hopefully next year it will be
Not
fixed?
for interims, yeah. This year for interims, it will not get better. For summative, we are working with them right now.
So hopefully we're not going to have this issue when summatives come along?
That's our plan.
Okay, all right, because I know that, I hear some things, but if we have these issues when it's summative, it's going to be some hard days.
Yeah, my comment this morning was it was hard for me last year to stand here and brag and say, hey, we just gave summative assessments and nobody knew it because it was so smooth. And to be 5 years into a program and have a portal change is very disappointing.
Yeah.
And it's an issue, and we have been very clear about that and our expectations, and we are diligently working. I have to give a lot of credit to Rachel Horn, the assessment director, and her persistence and work and her communications with DTCs. It's a real issue, and we have been very clear with superintendents that we recognize that it's a problem.
Okay.
So thank you for asking.
Okay. Just keep working at it. Do the best you can. That's all you can do.
I'd add something just in a positive note. The interim reports are excellent, and the data that is being given, very useful. It has been difficult, but that's a plus.
Okay.
It's a
Good.
plus. The report is the new layout. It's really good information. Yes, it's been very, very, very useful.
That's great news. Great news. Thank you. Anyone else have a comment or question about Aspire? All right. If I am at the right place on my agenda, we are to Educator Equity and Effectiveness, Dr. Bailey.
Good morning. How's
Good morning.
everyone today? Our presentation from Educator Effectiveness and Licensure will be pretty much like we did the last time that we met with all of you. And I'm fortunate to work with some outstanding educators, and so they're going to present the pieces of our presentation. And so this is a team effort this morning, and we work and we have so many facets going on and throughout the entire agency. But particularly in our division. And so I'm going to let our experts talk about the areas that they have been diligently working on since the last time that we met with you. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
morning.
Andy Sullivan with Educator Effectiveness and Licensure. My colleagues are tired of hearing about this, but Deb brought up the topic, and so I'm going to drive a truck through it real fast. My elementary school happens to be one of those that raised their scores 2-letter grades, so we're very proud of Ward Central Elementary and Cabot schools. As I like to tell them, we had the 4th highest growth in the state of Arkansas.
Wow.
So we're very proud of that, and so anytime I can talk about it, talk about having great teams. I had a great team of folks there at my school.
Congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate that. It had a little to do with me. I'm not that smart, really, but oh, Dan, there we go. Thank you. All right, so just a few updates. We have our Leads 2.0 is almost in the books from a training perspective. We have one final follow-up webinar. We did these at the universities and then followed those up with 3 training webinars that were virtual through Zoom. Our final one is today from 4 to 5 o'clock. If any of you have nothing else to do, I'll be glad to send you that link today. And today we changed our format a little bit for today from what we originally planned, and it is simply going to be a recap of what is the type of evidence that our superintendents expect as part of their evaluation from administrators, and also what are those burning questions and confusions out there. We wanted to make sure that they had an opportunity to simply ask questions of anything that might still be on their minds. We also have discussed equity labs in the past. We're excited to announce that we are going to hold 5 of these regionally at our local co-ops. And we are going to pull co-ops as if they were a district and take them through the process. One of the issues with equity labs at the moment is we still are having a marketing concern. When we say equity labs, people go, what is that, and do I need to do it? So our goal is to ensure that our co-ops understand what it is and why their districts need to participate. So basically we're trying to train cheerleaders out amongst the state so that they can go into their districts and say, hey, this is something valuable that you can benefit from, and we know that have the resources to do that. Poverty simulations is also something we've discussed in the past. We hope tentatively on February 6th that we're going to be able to offer a poverty simulation here at the department again. And thanks to Erin Franks back there in the back, she is going to work for an invitation for our legislators to come and attend. And then we are also going to invite those organizations that are new to DESE, that have not been part of us in the past, an opportunity to kind of bring them into the fold and show them what we're doing here in our offices. And then administrator data, came up last time. This is a link to a larger PowerPoint that you have access to. One real piece of information I'd like to point out is our growth in female superintendents from 17-18 to 18-19. We actually doubled that, went from 53 female superintendents to 107 last year. I will remind you that when you look at this data, it is currently a year old. We will pull the new data in December, and I'll be able to update that come January. So when we meet together next time, you'll be able to be looking at our 2019-20 data. So aside from that, really, we're very consistent from year to year in our information. The same thing with beginning administrators. No great changes. Our one real growth area was simply with female female superintendents. How y'all feel about that? Good? Any questions?
Keep
All
moving.
right. Thanks as always.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Charlie Crowson. I work in recruitment and retention and ed effectiveness. And I hope, yes, okay. So I'm going to talk to you about some of our work in recruitment as far as grow your own programs are concerned. We look at 2 different populations in communities when we talk about grow your own programs. One would be the student population in a district. And so currently what we have to offer for our high school students are our orientation and teaching courses and our teacher cadet courses. And so these are basically modeled on like an intro to teaching course that could be offered at a college or university. We work with college partners, and that's our big push right now, is to make sure that each of these schools have a college partner that they can work with. The college partner can provide support, concurrent credit options, and just really, model what's going on there with the high school and show these students that there is a pathway available for them and make that transition easy. We offer currently over 100 of our high schools, we have about 300 in the state, over 100 offer a course of this type, and to around 1,800 students in the state. And something else that we offer and support is it's Educators Rising. It is a student organization that's kind of under the umbrella of Phi Delta Kappa, which is the professional organization for teachers. And so it's just, we hope students get more involved in this. At our summit this year, this will be our 4th year to have the Impacting Tomorrow Summit, where we bring these students in that are involved in these courses or interested in a career in education. To UCA, it'll be at UCA this year. And last year we had about 600 students that were involved. And this year at that summit, we're going to offer competitions that Educators Rising sponsors. And some of these include like Educators Rising Moment, where they can talk about why they want to be a teacher, researching learning challenges, where they research a disability and then present their findings to the judges. Ethical dilemma, where they're presented with an ethical dilemma and they have to work through kind of how they would act in that situation and present it to the judges. Trauma-informed care, there's a speaking, they do research on that and then present that to the judges. So we're hoping to get more involvement with that this year from the students competing in those competitions and involved in Educators Rising. So moving forward, we've been working with the Division of Career Technical Education and ADHE to develop, really kind of flesh out that pathway to include rigorous academic coursework and pedagogical coursework to really model almost what an associate's degree in education looks like at the high school level. So students would have that opportunity to complete that pathway in high school and then receive a credential. What we were thinking, that would be a certified teacher assistant or a CTA. And so we hope that this would increase enrollment in these courses and student involvement, because they are more likely to want to receive like a credential and then see, oh, I've made it this far, now I can go ahead and go on to college and complete that process. And then, of course, we want to develop those uniform Arkansas standards for these pedagogical courses. Currently, orientation and teaching and teacher cadets have very similar standards, but as far as any additional pedagogical courses in the pathway, we don't really have set standards. So we're hoping to work to develop what those other courses would look like and focus on areas like community responsive teaching or maybe special education to really bring those standards into the high school courses. And then we want to increase the participation in Ed Rising at the high school and the collegiate level, because there are chapters, there's a availability of chapters at both levels. So students could be involved in high school and then transition to the collegiate chapter once they go to college. And so then the other population that we deal with are our community members for Grow Your Own. You kind of are looking at 3 different levels of education background when you're trying to pull people from your community into the classroom. You'll have folks that don't have any educational background or very few college hours. And so when we're looking at those people, we would like to make sure we have opportunities for them to be employed in the district, either as a paraprofessional or one of these certified teaching assistants like I discussed earlier. And we want to encourage them to complete an associate's degree or go right on into the 4-year institution. But very recently, we have added associates in education degrees onto the Our Future list of qualifying programs. And I don't know if you're familiar with Our Future, but in the past it's been geared toward regionally high demand fields like welding, trade and industry. But we've been working with ADHE, and they have now added associates in education onto that qualifying list. So we're very excited about that. It will allow students or any candidates to receive a free associates in education and then they can transfer to the four-year institution and complete that degree in education. So if they have an associate's degree, again, they can work as the parapro or in a position in the school, and then they can work to complete that degree. And then if they have a bachelor's degree, they can be employed as teacher of record and work toward licensure through one of our alternative routes. And so here's just a quick graphic of what I've just talked about with you guys, and just kind of how to promote these pathways to our potential teachers. You can start in high school and complete that pre-ed pathway, and then you can either transition to the community college or go right to the four-year college or university. We want to work with colleges and with school districts to provide opportunity for these individuals to be employed in the district throughout that time period where they can be gaining that valuable experience. And then they can transition into, or they can receive their license at that point after they earn that four-year degree in education. Or if they get a degree in general studies or business or English like me, they could go into an alternative route program and license that way. So here's just a quick visual of that. Any questions for me?
Any questions here?
I've got one for me, I'm not getting it out. So as I understand it, students are allowed to take courses so that when they graduate, they would have an associate's.
Well, we're really in the beginning stages of the pre-educator pathway. That's what we're working with ADHE, we're working with districts, identifying colleges that are really interested in this, to really develop that pathway for pre-educator. Now, there are options currently for students who take quite a few concurrent credit courses in high school and be well almost into an associate's, if not have completed that.
What I was thinking about were the students that we have that are, a lot of them are at risk for not graduating and coming from less than affluent backgrounds. Would they be able to go through this program and even be able to help support themselves as juniors and seniors in high school?
And that's what, our goal is to kind of decide where we want maybe two levels of the credentialing here. One that might not be so heavily tied, I'm trying to get your question, might not be so heavily tied to concurrent credit options, students that might not be able to meet those expectations of those concurrent courses, but still could complete the pathway and receive a credential, maybe a paraprofessional credential. To be a paraprofessional, you only have to have a high school diploma and have passed the paraprofessional assessment. So there still would be that opportunity there. They could receive pedagogical training and academic coursework in high school, but maybe not at the level of all these concurrent credit options. But there could be two different credentials that could be awarded. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not.
It helped, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
The Educators Rising membership, national membership, that organization, is that something that students only that have access to the teaching courses are available to try to be a part of? Or?
That can be offered in any district, in any school in the state. It doesn't have to necessarily, we advertise it through those educators most often that are teaching those courses. Hey, your students might love to be involved in this organization because their co-curricular activities tie in so well with the curriculum of these courses. But no, it's a student organization, just like I'll compare it a lot to FCCLA, where you could have your meetings at lunch and get anyone interested in the club to come in, and any teacher could sponsor that club.
Thank you.
Anyone else here? Over here?
I do have one question. I want to make sure that I understood correctly. So you're looking at the teacher cadet program through ADE, it's probably not the right way to say that, and then the orientation and teaching 1 and 2 through the Division of Career and Technical Education, taking both of those and making one pathway.
We're wanting to combine with orientation and teaching, but currently teacher cadets and orientation to teaching are a very similar course. Teacher cadets requires the concurrent credit option, where orientation to teaching doesn't, but there are some orientation to teaching courses that lead to concurrent credit. So they're based on similar standards, so they're very similar. So we're just combining our our forces here, especially with the transformation. It's been really easy, and Dr. Kramer's has been really easy to work with, and so we're just working together to create, it'll be a course similar to Teacher Cadet Orientation Teaching, like an Introduction to Teaching course, and then deciding which other pedagogical courses might be in that pathway, and then what academic courses we would want to add to that pathway.
And you're looking at standardizing that into one program across the board for all students with set prereqs.
Right.
And standardization of all the curriculum.
Yes, yes.
Okay, in my mind, the next logical thing in that process would be, are you working with higher ed, and I know you mentioned that you are working closely with them, to identify across the state colleges that would grant credits, concurrent credits for that? Because I know that's one of the obstacles at high school right now is some colleges do, some colleges do not, so it's almost geographically dependent as to whether or not your student receives very much college credit for their high school work.
Right, yes, and we are lucky with Teacher Cadets. The buy-in we've had from our colleges and universities in the state in orientation and teaching, they've been very receptive to grant that credit for that course. And from the conversations we've had so far, everyone seems to be very on board. But yes, we are in the very beginning stages of reaching out, putting feelers out who would like to work with us, and that's just kind of where we're going. We're going to partner with the colleges that want to work with us, and then scale it out as they see the other colleges and universities see the successes that we're going to achieve.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I had one question. You mentioned that 1,800 students in the state were participating in these courses. Do you have any data on about how many of them are, once they get to college, continuing the teacher pathway as a career?
We haven't, not necessarily. I know that Jeff Dyer was doing this position before me, and so for Teacher Cadets, I know he had been working with the colleges and universities to start adding, or were you a Teacher Cadet, to their admission applications, because Teacher Cadets is fairly new in Arkansas. Right. As far as orientation to teaching goes, maybe Dr. Kramers can speak to if they've done any tracking in that capacity, but as far as I'm not sure. I
think that would be a piece of data that would be very useful if we could maybe be able to track that in the future.
Absolutely, yes, we definitely want to do that.
Okay.
Good morning, Angela Kramer's Division of Career and Technical Education. With CTE, part of our responsibility of federal reporting is placement. So we have to talk about where students are 6 months after graduation. So it is a part of our required documentation. So we're getting more detailed in that, and as we implement Perkins beginning July 1, 2020, we'll be able to also give that very specific information on what's happening to the students once they graduate and if they are feeding into a teacher prep program.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Yes, it's helpful, you know, if we're doing something that works, we want to know it, but if it's not working, we want to tweak it or whatever, we need to know that too.
Definitely, yes.
All right. Any others? Okay. All right.
Okay. I'm next. Joan Leno, and I'm in educator preparation here at the department. I just have a couple of slides, a couple of updates since last time. This first one was we want to mention our financial incentives that we're pushing out for teachers who are teaching or adding areas of licensure in our shortage areas. And there are 3 programs in the state right now. 2 of those are with Department of Higher Ed. The first one is the STEP program, which is the State Teacher Education Program. And that program will reimburse up to $4,000 per year for federal loan repayment for teachers who get licensed in one of these declared areas and then actually teaches in that area. So that's a loan repayment, and that's the STEP. Another one is the Teacher Opportunity Program, or the TOP, and that's for an already licensed teacher who is working in the state, who is working to add one of these areas with coursework, and this will reimburse that teacher up to $3,000 a year for their tuition and books and fees. And so, for example, someone wanting to add special ed, they could take 6 hours per year, say they're working on an additional licensure plan, and it could almost pay for that whole tuition program throughout those 3 years. Another thing we started here out of my office is a reimbursement for test fees for currently licensed teachers who add a chronically critical shortage area. So we've kind of looked, this list of 13, we've narrowed it down to 10, and those are areas that are on the list almost every year. We used a criteria 4 out of the last 5 years. So special ed, math, library media specialist, our sciences. And so that will reimburse their test fee. And so, for example, someone who adds special ed, that's 3 different tests, and that comes to $379 in test fees, and we'll pay them for that. So that's gaining momentum. We only reimbursed 45 in our first year last year, and it's gaining momentum as we get the word out. So these shortage areas, they're identified every year. Dr. Savidio works on that and gets that list. This week is the week that this year's are due. And they've changed a little bit. Again, those 10 are about there every year, but a few have dropped off and one has been added back. So you'll see that published in January once it's approved. Want to real quickly update you on where we are with implementing the legislation around scientific reading instruction. We finished up with our K-12 special ed and elementary ed K-6 licensure programs that they've submitted all of their documents. Everything's been reviewed. A few still in progress, trying to get a few last syllabi in, but they are all on target to be finished up this semester. And then the teachers coming out of those programs, May 2021 and thereafter, will be proficient in scientific reading instruction that they received in their program. They're already having to take that test, the Foundations of Reading test. That piece of legislation was a little bit ahead of the second piece that was requiring the programs to align. So that's proficiency level. All other programs are required to submit how they're going to ensure their candidates meet the awareness level, and that's due July of 2020. So they're working on that, and so we'll have all of that in place. Again, the law requirement is for graduates May 2021 and thereafter. Another thing that we have done is we're still working with our ed prep providers to provide them resources. We've provided a voucher for one person from each program to go through the letters training, the online letters training. They're all enrolled in that right now. It'll take them about a year, so probably by next summer, everybody will be through that, and we hope down the road to be able to offer them more training and some RISE training. Okay. Any questions?
Any questions over here? Anyone?
No?
Over here? No?
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm going to share a few updates about the Career Continuum. This is something that we work together with Licensure and Educator Effectiveness. All of us work together on this. This is our updated numbers so far of the early career professional educators, career professional educator, master, lead, and then those who have both. And we are still getting a lot of questions. People are saying, like superintendents and principals, how do I use these teacher leaders in my district? And we are working very closely with those individuals on that. Yesterday, we had an advisory committee meeting that Dr. Bailey hosts with some are superintendents, principals, teachers. And I thought it was really interesting because the more we talk about it and the more they understand it, it's like we already do some of those things. But now, it's really helping them to understand how to either give them some kind of incentives, whether it be pay or even protected time. So we're really excited about this one. So what does that do as far as opportunity culture? It feeds right into opportunity culture because those people with those designations can be multi-classroom leaders. And in that model where it supports teams of teachers, whether it be like a lead teacher supporting novice teachers under their umbrella, or those teams might even have paraprofessionals or might have aspiring teachers that might be coming from a university doing their student internship, can work under that lead teacher who becomes that teacher of record. So presently, we have this district here, Forest City, just began this year, and those are the 3 schools that they have in an opportunity culture model. We paid a visit to them just a few weeks ago, and they're on top of it, and they've got their lead teachers, and I loved it because the conversation with those lead teachers were, they're trying to recruit people. So as we were talking, they were like, we know some people that want to teach in Forest City because they can under this umbrella and with this opportunity. So it was super exciting. They're doing a really good job. And then Lincoln Consolidated School District, they are in full force, and I will tell you, we met with them. We were at the Northwest Co-op just this past week doing a presentation, and one of the Lincoln assistant superintendents, she came up and she said, we have had so much growth. We are so excited. She said Public Impact came to visit, and they said we're doing everything right. And they're looking at their data now, and she said, I can't wait for everybody to see it. So they're super excited, and a lot of districts in their area are asking to go visit their school now. Because they're understanding what it is. I think Andy mentioned earlier about the marketing around what we call things. So like I know at the summit this past summer, we had an opportunity culture presentation, and we had people here from Public Impact, and we didn't really fill the rooms up. So we thought, what is it about this that people really don't understand? Is it the connections? And then we thought, oh, it's all in the wording, because what is opportunity culture? So this year we have plans to rename that and say something like, are you struggling in your district or having, issues in your district recruiting and retaining teachers? If you are, this is the session to attend.
You will fill the room.
That's what assistant superintendent yesterday, he said, you'd filled the room up.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, he wants to know all about it because now he wants to come on board. And that was Osceola School District, so we're excited about that. And then North Little Rock, they started out with a middle school, very successful, and they have moved it on to some elementary buildings now. They have expanded it to their 7th and 8th grade. I actually have a daughter teaching there, and she said, Mom, I have a real mentor that's working with me. And it was like so exciting to hear. So things are going great there. And then they're moving it on into the high school. So we're excited about that. They just hosted for us this past week an Opportunity Culture School training for the lead teachers. And we had almost 90 that attended.
Wow.
So those are lead teachers that are going to be teaching those classes and be that teacher of record for districts. So, and that was for all over the state. And these were those who were in attendance, except for Texarkana. And I'm sorry, they have just recently asked not to be a part of it this year. They have some things they want to work out, but they're still interested in working with us next year. But Augusta, Gentry, Hope, and Scholar Made Charter were all there in attendance and just so excited about moving on with this. Hope, they're doing a fantastic job. Gentry, Christy Tolan, that is the superintendent there, she was with North Little Rock when they started their journey, and so that's why she was so interested. And I think the one that we did leave off is Lee County, so that is another one. And Augusta, by the way, shared with us that they're all excited about this model, but she was trying to figure out a way that she could pay her lead teachers more money. So she said one of the things we did is we looked at what we were paying in substitutes. And she used paraprofessionals to come in and actually hired them full-time, and they're going to work under this model as well. She saved the district around $80,000 last year.
Wow.
So she said that's money that we're going to put back into those lead teacher salaries, or at least a stipend for those teachers. Mm-hmm. So that was really exciting. And I think that's my last slide. Let me make sure, but I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah, because that goes to Frank next. Any questions?
This is exciting. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning, Frank Savidio from Educator Effectiveness and Licensure. There are a couple of slides that I'm going to share with you, and I think that slides that you may have seen before. The first one here is about the Arkansas Qualified Teacher, which is, of course, our way of making sure or trying to ensure that there are qualified teachers based on content knowledge in classes where licensure may be waived. And so, we have the system in place, or the criteria that are established in order to determine whether a person is what we would consider to be an Arkansas qualified teacher, and it's based on the fact that they would have content knowledge particularly. Only applies in areas when they're teaching core academic subjects where licensure is waived, or in the case of someone teaching in a special education class or alternative learning environment. Of course, the person has to have a bachelor's degree, and then they have to be able to demonstrate content knowledge in whatever it is the subject that they're teaching. That's not necessarily something new. I think you may have seen that before, but that is something that we stand strongly behind, making sure that we do have qualified people, or at least content knowledge, in the classroom. Another one of the bits of information I'm going to share with you is about the Workforce Stability Index, which is a calculation that we have derived in order to sort of give a description of what the quality of the faculty might be in a school or in a district. It is based on the levels of inexperienced teachers that they have, the level of numbers of teachers who may be ineffective or may be rated ineffective, numbers of teachers who are teaching out of field in their classroom, and the rate of attrition, how often teachers are leaving, or the rate at which teachers are leaving. And so we have this calculation that is based on those factors, and that's an annual calculation, and it's been reported in My School Info over the last few years. We are just now, the data that you see up there is based on previous years. That's up to 18-19. I have just now received the data for 19-20, and so we'll be putting that into My School Info very soon. What you see there in the lower right-hand corner on the slide is a couple of asterisks, which indicate that, when we look at all of these different factors and we try to establish whether there are differences, and what we do see, or what we have seen in the past, is that there have been some differences in these indices between high poverty and low poverty schools and high minority and low minority schools. The Workforce Stability Index, the way it's calculated is the highest score that you can receive is 100, and the higher the score, the better. And you can see in the high minority, the low minority and the low poverty schools, we see higher scores than we do in general in high poverty and high minority schools. This slide is an indication of what they're doing in data collection and licensure, I believe, identifying areas that where they've been having to flag schools or districts for the way that the data is input into eSchool. And the biggest problems apparently that they are seeing is that they're either incorrectly coding the teacher or for the class that they're teaching, or failing to indicate whether the teacher needs to be on an additional licensure plan. So that is something that the folks in licensure have been working on, and have been communicating to the schools and to the districts, and trying to make sure that that is better taken care of in the future. So I think that reflects what they wanted on that one. And so, anyone have any questions on any of the information that I just spoke about?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to sum it up here for us, and we'll move on to the next thing. And thanks for your patience this morning. I know that's a lot of information in a short time, but as you can see, when I first came up this morning, it takes a team and to work in all of the varied areas in our division. And so they've been working diligently since the last time that we got to visit with you, and working on our goals in Essa. And of course, two or three of our very important goals, or two, the things that we do each day and we spend all our time on, is to recruit, retain our educators, and provide them with the skills necessary, and also to support them and from our area. And so that's what we work on and do every day, and it takes a team of us, that's for sure. And but one of the things that I know that Ms. Hurst just got through mentioning is yesterday We worked with our advisory team, and I'm real excited to talk about this, and I'll try to be very brief, but I'm real excited about it. And we started this back in October, and one of the things that we decided to do was bring in our current practitioners, and across the state, and we spent a lot of time. I think I told you last time we met, we had over 209 people want to be on that team, and of course that was very hard to select a group of about 16 or 17 out of 209 people, but we put 2 teams together, and so we have a main team and we have an alternate team. And like she said, those are principals and superintendents, teachers, and university people, and we're trying to get some parents. We do have, and a school board member and some students on that, and we're still working to try to get that going. But we had a great meeting yesterday. We took the topics that we had, and I mentioned some topics up there. I won't read them because you can, but we took our topics from our meeting that we had with them in October, and it went very well. We asked for their feedback from that meeting, and we have a Google Doc, and so they all have access to that. And they put in their comments and their feedback from our October meeting, and we combined all that. And so we shared all that with them yesterday. And I know I even talked with the team after the meeting was over, and I said, I don't know about y'all, but I think yesterday's meeting was even better than the October meeting. And I heard some of the participants even making those comments, so that made us very happy. And we also wanted input not only from the things that we wanted to make sure that we communicated the things, and you saw a lot of that in today's presentation. And so we spoke a lot about what you just saw yesterday with our team. And so we went over those things, but not only are we trying to communicate what we're doing here so that this team can take it back to their colleagues and their community members and their board members and things. And so, the main thing of that is not only give them the knowledge of it, but to communicate what we're doing, and so they can also communicate to the people that they need to communicate that with, because communication is, in my opinion, the key to success in almost everything that we do. And so we work really hard, and we need to continue working hard to make sure that we're communicating the right information with the right people. And so that's what this team is all about. And so we took their ideas, they brought ideas to us at yesterday's meeting, and we ranked those ideas. And so at our next meeting in February, we will be speaking about the things that they for sure want to ensure that we are giving them the guidance and giving them the support that they need to run their buildings and to teach their classrooms and to operate their districts in the most effective and efficient manner that they can, and that we're providing the support from the state that our educators need. And so I'm really excited about that team, and I look forward to seeing the work, even though I won't be directly involved in that. And because I don't know that you know that, but I will be retiring in a couple of weeks. But so I will miss out on that, and but I'm excited to at least be a part of getting that going, and I hope to see the good work. And I even told them if I need to be a volunteer and come back, I'm happy to do that. And so a lot of exciting work going on currently, and I hope to see that continue, and I'm sure that it will. So if you don't have any questions,
Any questions?
I have one question and comment.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of volunteers, and I remember you talking about that at the last meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
How many volunteers were coming?
Yes, ma'am.
So by my rough estimate, you have about 180 people who didn't make the cut. Is there a way we can include?
I'm glad you asked that. That's an absolute great question. And in fact, when I sent the letter back to them, telling them, hey, and I let them know that we had that many. And one way that, because I even had a lot, when you're in education, as long as I've been, you have a lot of friends. And I even had them call me and say, hey, how come I didn't make the cut? How come I'm not on the team? And I said, because I did exactly as I said I was going to do, or I tried my best to. And that was exactly what that letter said. And that was first come, first serve. So we even had the time stamp on there. And so I said, that's what we did. And I said, we went through all corners of the state, so we would have a good representation. We had a good diverse group. And so I'm proud of that. And that took several of us doing that. It wasn't just Suzanne picking them, I'll tell you. And it took a lot of time to go through that. But I said, but I'm so excited that you want to be on this team, and we have this many people, and guess what? So I've shared that list with the rest of us, and I will share that before I get gone with the other ACs and the other the other people here at the agency, because it's so exciting to know that we have that many people that want to volunteer and want to be a part of the many decisions and all of the activities and things that we do and all of the hard work that goes on here at this agency each and every day. And I'm excited to know that. And I promise we will use them as best that we can, because we need lots of people. And we're always open to ideas. And that's what I told the group yesterday. You know, I'm excited to see you guys here, because I know you're busy at your jobs, but I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and to provide us with the feedback that we need to make those good decisions. And those that could not be on it, and we're already using some of those. I've even shared with Joan and some of the other ones. I said, we need some volunteers for this. I said, I got the right person for you. So I promise they're going to be utilized, I'm sure, maybe not right at the moment, but eventually they will be. And so we're excited about that. Thanks for that question.
Anyone else? Well, we're going to miss you. Congratulations on your retirement. And one comment, you're too young to retire.
Well, it's like I said, I may be retiring, but I promise I'm not going to be sitting home, just sitting there every day. I've got lots of other things I look forward to doing. So
Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy. All right. English learners, Ms. Kerr. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
There we go.
There we go. I think I might have gone too far. The English Learner Title III Advisory Group last met September 4th via Zoom, and we welcomed several new members, partly based on feedback from other members who had suggested we get wider diversity of representation and just needing to update the list, so that was good. What we did that day is we actually looked at the English Learner Program risk assessment and the English Learner Program monitoring procedures to get feedback on for how we're going to do that. And that is a new element for us that is almost complete, and the final version should be completed this month. There were several revisions that needed to be made. Part of what the group had been working on in the past, we had been revising the Title III English Learner subgrants, and this is our second year to use a new, actually I think it's our first year to use the newer application. And we accepted 50 districts' applications they had submitted, and we've accepted their applications, and so they are, delivering Title III programs and services. This year we also began having 2019-20 English learner plans for non-Title III districts. We received those from 218 districts. So these are districts who need to tell us how they're going to serve English learners, or tell us they don't have English learners. So basically every district other than a Title III district is supposed to submit that. We're in the process of reviewing those. And we've already been utilizing them to provide technical assistance to districts, but part of the review is tied into the English Learner Program monitoring procedures. So it's all being done at the same time. Another thing that's new right now is the 2019-20 recent Immigrant grants. I've been in the process this week of notifying the 5 districts that qualified based on our Cycle 2 data. And those districts are North Little Rock, Green Forest, Conway, and I just went blank on the 5th district. There are 5 districts. The posting is actually on the federal grants page. They put the initial notification. There'll be a commissioner's memo coming out about that shortly. Items that we are going to be addressing with the advisory group via Zoom meeting this spring, which hasn't been the date set. We had mentioned in the past that our professional judgment rubric exit criteria, we did review it in the past. We're going to survey districts again to see how they are implementing it and what challenges they're facing. We're also going to examine how students who were exited without an English language arts score as one of their data points to show that they are performing at a level comparable to English-only peers, how they performed on the spring 2019 state assessments. and we'll be examining the 2019-20 monitoring status of students who exited in the 2018-19 school year. All that to say, we're wanting to see are the criteria that we established effective? Are we exiting students, and are they being successful after they've exited? Or did we exit a lot of students and they had to be brought back because they couldn't maintain their performance? We also are aware of, I've brought this up before, that a big area we have a challenge with is 11th and 12th grade, coming up with enough data points alongside an Alpha 21 proficiency profile, score of proficient, in order to exit. So we're going to look and see where we're standing on that. Do we have a lot of students who had an Alpha 21 score of proficient but were unable to exit because of not enough corresponding data? And what can we do about that? The main thing we have to do with the exit criteria is we have to be standardized across the state. Up until now, we've been saying 2 data points plus the proficiency profile score on Alpha 21 for all grade levels, and we're just going to re-examine especially 11th and 12th grade. Another new thing that was implemented this year was the need to actually code in eSchool about the type of language instruction educational program that each student receives. They have to receive 2 types of programming. One is how they're actually being provided English language development instruction, and the other is how they're being provided meaningful access to the core content. And so that was new this year. We're reviewing numbers that were submitted on cycle 2 and comparing them to those district EL plans that were submitted October 1 as well. And all that data from cycle 2 to be able to analyze just became available in November for us. So we're trying to bring all that together. Those are the next items we'll be doing. One thing I wanted to update you on, that opportunity for Arkansas, is that we were a member of the competitive grants for state assessment programs. We were a partner state. Mississippi's the lead state on this project. They received a grant in order to evaluate English language progress models, the sensitivity of claims about progress across state models. You can see all the partners there that are listed. Basically, the goal of that is for us to really look and see, in our Essa plan, we have the English language proficiency indicator and our way of tracking if they're on progress towards exiting. And the purpose of participating in this grant is to see, are we getting the information we need from the model we've chosen? Is it working? And so it'll be interesting to participate in this. Denise Arola and I, Denise is the data guru here. We are the team lead representatives from Arkansas, and we have our first meeting with this grant in late January in Mississippi, and we will know more about how this is going to roll out over the next few years in order to evaluate how our ELP indicator is performing and see if there's anything we need to adjust on that. So, do you have any questions for me?
Questions?
Not really question, just comment on, I'm really ready to see some of the data points that y'all will be looking at, specifically about the use of assessments in exiting and exit criteria, because I know that the monitor, the way that students are pulled back into the program if they don't continue to hit that monitored status requirements. I'm curious as to what that looks like. I'm curious as to what that looks like across the state and how often we're having to pull students back in for not maintaining those data points.
Yes, I'm curious too.
Well, that's what data does. It helps us to see where we're at and where we need to go. So
Yeah,
that's good.
but ultimately it's a good place to be. We're looking into those data points. Like, we're in a good place to have everything is set in order to see that information.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. District support. Ms. Green. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jane Green, the Coordinator of District Support in Title I. Let me see if I can.
There we go.
The District Support Unit is a newly created unit to, currently we are assisting districts that have schools that have been, are in need of level 3 and in need of level 4 support according to their literacy scores on the most recent summative assessment. I would like to say that currently we're doing a lot of training with those districts with PLC academies that we are working with instructional leadership. We have trained approximately 550 participants in those academies. The academies actually take place over a 3-period cohort. So cohort 1 goes to 3 different trainings, and each training is a 2-day training. So they are getting some very intensive support in regards to that. Additionally, we are also working with our educational cooperatives. The specialists at those cooperatives in literacy are also receiving that same training where they can help us provide support to the districts. We are currently in the process of reviewing district support plans that we have, I believe, a little over 40 districts that are in need of level 4 support, and about 70 that are in need of level 3 support. So they have to submit a district support plan to us after looking at their building level plans and tell us how they intend to help support those schools in their literacy components. And then we take a look at those schools and make sure that they're spending their 1003 money, which is Title I money, to address the needs in those schools. Our plans are submitted in IndaStar, and we read those and we send them back for additional information. We are able to give them feedback, telling them something that they may miss according to compliance, and they're able to adjust that and then send it back to us for us to approve those. And we have several districts that we have already approved those plans, so we're doing very well there. And our intent after that is when we get all the plans approved, we are going to use data that we gather from that to see what particular district support we think they may need. And then we will actually go into the district and offer that support. And we go into districts now if they request it. There's a couple of districts that have already requested that our program advisors come into, so they are an integral part of those districts already. I'm looking at our cooperative trainings we have done earlier in the year. We went to all the co-ops and did trainings on what the expectations were as far as their district support plans in regard to literacy. We also were involved in a special ed training that they went around and talked to schools about or talk to districts about schools that had been identified for additional targeted support, really dealing with their subpopulations, and we were part of that training as well. Training opportunities are based on our future support, of course, is going to be based on needs, and I already kind of touched on that. When we read their district support plans, we'll kind of gauge which districts we think we need to prioritize as far as going in and offering support on the ground within the district. Of course, we get face-to-face support anytime that they request, and we return numerous phone calls at this point in time. Our training opportunities in the future, we will be part of our Division of Elementary and Secondary Education Summer Summit that we have in June. Of course, we go to cooperatives because we're able to push out more information to a larger group at that time, and then district level trainings as need be. Any questions?
Any questions over here? Anyone? Just a couple of things. Thinking about the different levels of support, and maybe at a district that's in level 4, Where would you say that most of your support is given? Is it given at the district level, or are you able to get down to the school level, or even down to the teacher level? Tell me about your support there.
We base that on the needs of the district. We give support at the district, but you can't really do that without getting down to the school level, because when they write their district support plan, they can't write a good district support plan without having good building level plans. So we have to dive deeper instead of just looking at the district level and look into the school level plans and say, because the districts are the ones responsible for approving those school level plans. So if they weren't good, strong plans to begin with, they may have to back up some and address some needs there before they can really write an effective district support plan. So we really do both. And with our 1003 funds, we have really encouraged districts to use that for professional development. That's almost all of our districts use all of their 1003 funds for professional learning opportunities, because a lot of times the change in the education of the kids, it starts with that adult behavior change.
Whenever you're going into districts that are struggling, or schools that are struggling, are you looking at any other funds besides the 1003 funds and saying, this might not be a wise way to spend this money, or are you looking at other suggestions that could be made?
Yes, ma'am, we are. As part of the 1082 and addressing their district support plans, one of the compliance components is they have to tell how they're going to prioritize their ESA funds.
Okay.
So they actually have to, being the Title I director, we have a method in which they have to upload into InduStar their projected Title I funds, so I can see what their expenditures are. Now they have to go back and add those ESA funds, so I can see and tell indeed that they are funneling money toward the literacy components that they've got, or they're addressing dyslexia, that they're hiring literacy interventionists, that they're hiring literacy coaches, that they're doing PD for literacy. So yes, we look at other funds besides 1003. We look at ESA and also look at Title I.
And one other question, are they having to provide you evidence that maybe what they're spending those ESA funds, that it's evidence-based, that it's research-based, that it's going to affect student learning?
Most of the time when they use their ESA funds or their 1003 funds, they're using them on professional learning opportunities that we know are evidence-based. A lot of times that the programs that they're choosing to spend their funds on are ones that have been recommended, like to address dyslexia.
Okay.
So yes, our assumption, and we check to make sure that those are in the evidence base. And you have to remember, this is our first year to really do this.
Okay.
So this has kind of been a learning year for both the districts, because it's hard. Their plans were due November 1st this year. Most districts already had their budgets made for the ESA funds as well as their Title I funds, but we allowed them to do a mid-year change to their budgets in Title I. So this year it's kind of been getting their feet wet kind of thing, because a lot of districts already have those ESA funds obligated to salaries that may be outside of the literacy component. So this year it's just kind of looking to make sure they have started putting some of their funds into that. It says prioritize. It doesn't say a percentage that they have to, spend. So we just really are checking right now to make sure they are addressing the literacy component.
So is it something that you think is going to get better as time goes on, that we're going to get better at being smart about spending our funds?
I do, because the first time around us reading those, now we can start, when we start going into the districts, let's say after the first of the year, we can say, now next year, remember when you start your planning, you've got to start looking this spring and how you're going to address literacy starting next year, and you need to start looking at those funds now, not waiting until,
Okay. I had one other question, but I've gone blank. Oh, just as far as whenever you're looking at districts that are in need of support, you know, that some need more support than others, how deep are you able to dive into the problems as far as it maybe even getting down to the classroom level? Are we able to make any differences there, or has it been more big picture?
I'd like to say we're able to get down to the classroom level. We have 2 districts that we are already boots on the ground in, and during that time while my specialists are in those districts, they actually do classroom walkthroughs, and they do the look-fors. You know, what are they addressing, how are they addressing rise, but yes, we actually do classroom walkthroughs with the building principals, or in some of our districts we have the Leadership Academy in there, and we also work collaboratively with them. So when they're there doing their walkthroughs, we'll also be with them on those walkthroughs.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I just had something briefly. So have you done enough that you probably don't have data, but information that tells you this is a good thing, it's working, we're moving in the right direction, and here's some changes that we're already starting to see? Are you far enough along the process yet for that?
I think that they possibly could see some changes when they do their walkthroughs, but as far as hard data to look at, still a little early for us. I mean, as far as what we've been able to offer them.
Thank you.
My question was centered more about the accountability, as Ms. Newton brought up, in regards to funding and making sure the subpopulations are being targeted, especially within those training sessions. So it's really good to hear that there are specific categories that schools can pick from to address their specific subpopulation groups or populations that are struggling. And I would just be interested more in, as this develops and this is in early stages, as to the difference that are noticed from a student perspective as well, if they too can in turn see that, okay, based on my teachers are changing this methodology or ways of approaching instruction after a certain time period. So just really trying to look introspectively as to the effect that it has on students.
Right, and I think after the whole instructional model that we're going through right now with our PLC academies that we're doing as far as building that capacity, and that is our goal, is to build capacity in those buildings. I mean, they have got to be able to do that. I think we are going to start seeing that right down to the student level, because when the adult behavior on how they teach and how they instruct, and everybody is doing it in a similar manner, I think we're going to see some growth in our student in the individual subpopulations, because you know there's lots of things we stress to the districts as far as how they instruct subpopulations. For instance, the SPED population, are you pulling them out? Are they missing core instruction? So they hear that from us all the time, you know, and are discouraged from those, you know, missing core instruction. So I'm hoping, yes, we will be able to come back with data that supports it has touched those kids.
Any others? Thank you, very good. All right, we're moving on to Perkins, Dr. Kramer and Dr. Rowland. Perkins part, and then Ms. Kaufman's going to talk about amendment, and that should be it.
Good morning again. Angela Kramers with the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. We're excited, let me advance to that slide for us. We're excited to talk a little bit more detail about where we are with Perkins on a few of the data points, and we're so appreciative of the team that we have to coordinate with what we're doing with Perkins after all of the modeling and lessons learned with Essa. So the 7 required student performance data indicators that we are responsible for as a part of our Perkins plan, there are 7, and we have them listed above. And what is different from Essa is we also have to report science. So literacy, math, science. Also the 4-year graduation rate and the extended graduation rate, which are those students who don't finish within the 4 years. and then also placement, as I mentioned earlier, on where those students are 6 months after graduation. And that's important for Perkins because as the Essa plan is K-12, Perkins is that bridge in between Essa and WIOA, so we have to start thinking about next steps and where they are and how they're prepared for either career, college, whatever that future success place is. And then the other indicator we have is the percent concentrators that will lead to non-traditional fields. Now, the federal government, the way that non-traditional is defined is by gender only, and then there are a separate set of categories for subpopulations, and so that is also a strong consideration with an increase in subpopulation data and support for subpopulations. But under this specific performance indicator is on non-trad with gender, and what that means is looking at workforce. When you look at a career field of the future, what gender is does not have a heavy presence in that career. So for example, if 25% or less of a specific gender is in that career field, we consider that a non-trad field that we need to encourage more to go in to build the workforce. So examples might be males in teaching, females in STEM, all of those non-trad, what we consider. So those are things we report out. So as we look at courses and course codes, we have to track that by gender and then report how many students are preparing in the pipeline in non-traditional fields. And then that's how you can work and frame targeting, recruitment, and interest in those fields where you see major gaps. And schools are responsible for making sure they're doing things to get the word out to students to steer them toward options and opportunities that otherwise maybe they haven't heard through parents, families, communities, that they're getting those opportunities. They're hearing it from counselors, teachers. One note on that is one of the national studies we've been following is kind of communicating about career and technical education, and the counselors and teachers are two of the top listed of who students listen to and trust on communicating about their choices for classes that they take in high school. And so it's really important that that messaging is there. So once we understand that data, that we're sharing that widely so that everybody understands where our gaps are and how we can make sure students are aware of all students are aware of opportunities within that. So any questions on the 7 indicators, which is quite a bit to have 7, but we're happy to work to meet that.
Questions? Okay.
Great. And I'm Denise Arola with the Office of Innovation for Education, and Ms. Kaufman asked me to talk a little bit about the process that we're using to kind of go through the data and help you guys get in a spot where you base your baselines and your targets for your data in the best modeling you can have so that they're data informed. And one of the differences between Essa and Perkins 5 is there are some elements that harken back to NCLB in that they have to set targets, and so it's really important that those baselines be informed in the best proxy of what we think we're going to have in the way of concentrators. So what we're doing is we're looking at the new definition of concentrators that's going to be proposed for Perkins 5, going back and looking at several years of data. We've had Sarah Schamberger, who's been giving us wonderful documents full of many programs of study. And so for each program of study, we've been coding that into our system so that we can then use that to go back and look at who are the students that would be considered a concentrator if we were applying the new definition. And then what we're doing is we're taking that group of concentrators and we're looking at that group of kids, and we're just starting to get some initial data that we actually need to review with them to make sure we're on target, that it makes sense to them, that it has some face validity, that we're capturing the right kids the right way. And then we're also looking at, of those kids, how many of them do we have achievement data for, literacy, math, and science? How many of them are we able to identify within the student tables that are used to calculate the 4-year and extended year cohort graduation rates? So that's the place where we are now with just starting to get data. And then we've had a number of conversations about some of the limitations that are in Perkins 5 in terms of the law just has a couple of really brief statements about how their academic achievement indicator for literacy, math, and science has to be based on the assessments that are approved in the Essa plan. So that's grades 9 and 10 ACT Aspire, if we were looking at that. But the early numbers we're looking at say that grade 9 has a low number of concentrators, because that's the first year that they can get the 2 full credits that they would need to be considered a concentrator. And then in 10th grade, we have the 10th grade ACT Aspire. But the way that the law is written, we will have to include those kids all the way through 12th grade. And if we look at just grades 9 and 10 ACT Aspire, how are we helping schools to respond in a way with students where we say, among your concentrators, this is what your percent of kids are that are meeting their academic achievement requirement within the school for Perkins. We want them to have an opportunity to be able to improve upon that. And what we're learning is the numbers of 11th and 12th graders are high. So by the time you get to 12th grade, you've got you count all of your concentrators, whether they got that concentration as a 9th grader, a 10th grader, 11th grader, or 12th grader till they're out of your school. So it's almost like cumulative. And what we want to be able to do is to, in that theory of action, that if schools are focusing on what matters most for learning, we should see improvements in the areas that we use to measure learning. So what we are doing is we're modeling lots of different combinations of, if we use ACT Aspire at 9th and 10th grade, what does that look like? And then if we were to try and bring in, that would meet the law, but then it leaves our theory of action with no incentive to improve, which is that's just not tenable for our educators and our schools to be in that situation. So we've been looking at what percentage of the concentrators have an ACT score. And if we took the ACT score and we thought about how you could break the ACT score down, if you think about 19, the way we think about Ready or Exceeds, because that's a measure that we use in our community colleges and our colleges, then we could actually use that at 11th and 12th grade. And since ACT Aspire is so closely connected and used to help kids understand where they could be on the ACT, there would be an opportunity for schools to be able to show improvement. And so our very first run of the data is real positive, that would be really an important piece. And if you remember, flashbacks to when we were doing Essa, it's really important to be able to justify that rationale with the data, to say, look, this is one of the reasons why this is so important, because we're trying to incentivize improvement in the academic achievement. Perkins 5 has been directly connected to academic achievement. For that purpose, this system of the indicators is going to be the best set of ways that we do it that will continue that type of incentivized behavior, focusing on what matters most for learning. And this way, too, if schools are focused on what matters most for learning, it's improving their Essa and it's improving their Perkins. So having those two pieces really congruent and aligned so that schools don't feel like they have to do something completely different for a kid to meet the needs of this accountability, the accountability systems for both of these two programs. So that's really where our focus has been, is just getting a handle around how do we make sure we're defining and identifying the right students as concentrators, modeling what data we have to the best extent that we can, and then providing that information for decision making so that when you set baselines and you set targets, they are things that make sense, that they're valid, that they and that they incentivize the right trajectory of improvement. That's what we're up to.
Thank you. And one thing, even though we are responsible for placement, the 6-month out indicator to track, one challenge with that is it's not always verified data. It often can come self-report from schools. And so we are working with the Division of Workforce Services. They've already signed a national data sharing agreement for workforce and wage salary information. We really hope to get added to that, so we're already in discussion. So that would give us verified placement data and stuff that we would not have self-reported, because we even have in the past had to go to Facebook and counselors and parents, because it's that 6 degrees of separation and you just do what you have to do. But after we've gone to a few of the Data Quality Institute conferences throughout the state, talking to what other states are doing, some of them are just plainly saying in their business rules that if that verified data is not available, they just won't be able to report it. So if that verified data is available, then it will be reported. So our placement numbers will kind of follow so that we have the most accurate verified data as it becomes available, is how we kind of are hoping to approach it, so that we have quality data to report.
Yes.
So I really appreciate, she says it so eloquently, all the work that's been happening behind the scenes. The data component is nothing that we are required to report out to the field for public comment. The pieces that we are required to report for public comment is both the draft of the state plan, and then also what we are choosing as options for the program quality indicator. And what that means, that is what we define by that one choice. How do we define a quality CTE program? And those 3 choices are an industry recognized credential at the end of that program of study, concurrent enrollment, or work-based learning. And so far, the public comment in both our face-to-face grassroots meetings across the state and through the commissioner's memo that was published for, it is by far the industry recognized credential. I think most communities feel confident that there's already some successes built around credentialing, and it is an equitable measure. So on concurrent enrollment, some of that is different regions of the state. Students have different ACT requirements, those components. And so there's a concern that there's not an equity choice there. In work-based learning, we have worked hard to just begin a firm structure around work-based learning, which means in the past, students can do internship. They could go anywhere, do anything, whether it's tied to their program of study or not. And that is really not workforce development. So we want students to have that opportunity as an internship, but clearly defined that the goal of that is building soft skills, how to show up to work on time, how to build customer service relations, all of those things, critical thinking, those things that we know business and industry partners need. But when we really truly build work-based learning right to develop economic development, and that WIOA piece of who we need to be responsible for, is that we're creating youth apprenticeships, career practicums that are specifically linked to the program of study that student is in. So if you're in a healthcare pathway, you are in something that's related to that healthcare, because you really are trying to laser focus and be prepared for that career, whether it's going to college to become a healthcare professional, or you want to go straight into the workforce, a CNA, an LPN, something where there's some additional learning, but maybe not a 4-year degree. But whatever the choice is, we have to prepare them for that pathway correctly. So that all infrastructure has just been developed. We want there to be accountability as far as what are your goals, both from the employer's perspective and the student's perspective, to have what the schedule is going to be, what you would do showing up on time and tracking your hours and time that's committed towards that. So there are specific hour requirements for each of those, just as you would with an employment situation. So because that's new, we don't have a lot of confidence in that right now. Not we, but collectively, as that input has come back, there's not a lot of confidence. So the credentialing, so both of those, the memo number is listed on the PowerPoint, and so please, the draft plan is there for comment and review, and that is a living, breathing document. One thing that we've decided to do, instead of creating the whole plan, putting it out, is we want it to be like we did the stakeholder feedback, just a very grassroots process and not a top-down approach in any way whatsoever. So as we get feedback and input, and as we continue developing based on conversations, we are still adding to that plan. So about every 2 weeks that will go up, and all of the new areas that have been added or adjusted are highlighted in yellow, so you can kind of see how that document evolves. This Thursday, well, tomorrow, we will be at the State Chamber with business and industry partners from across the state, and so that's another important feedback for us to have. And we have had other conversations with business and industry, but it's standing room only, over 88 registered, and we know it'll be a very good conversation, but that will be heavy around conversations around some of the state employment data, and how we have aligned our programs of study with what the labor market information is saying, And then in addition to the work-based learning opportunities, because we need the businesses to also understand, we need them
Yes.
to make that happen. And so that's just a really important conversation to have tomorrow as well, because many of them want to help, and they want teachers to be in their businesses. They want not just the students to come, but they want the teachers to be there, and making sure we have all of those conversations to happen. So any feedback, anytime, because we're just excited. It's just a great opportunity, and it only rolls around every so many decades, and so yay.
Decades.
Yes, so anytime, we'd love to hear feedback, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to assist with any questions.
I have a couple. Because I also am probably a supporter of the 3 of industry credentials. We've gone from 0 4 years ago to just under 900 last year, I think, is where we are. So I'm very excited to hear that. I would like to see that included in our Essa plan. A concern I have surrounding that, though, is as that is not a requirement under Perkins 4, if we make that a requirement under Perkins 5, does that eliminate the potential to use that federal funding source to fund those credentials? Because I think in the majority of the districts, that's how those are currently being funded.
That is a great comment. I will confirm with Octave, but that is not my understanding, since it's not like a classroom, like you're talking about an equipment list where there could be a supplanting issue, that type. So
Right.
even though it's a requirement, that is just what we've chosen as an indicator. But my understanding is that Perkins is still available to fund that, because that's the important equity piece too, because Perkins can pay for those students to take the test. They can pay for the transportation to get the students to take the test. So many states are gearing towards that very thing, and that's the whole incentive, is to use your Perkins funds to pay for that, and that's the plans discussed nationwide towards that.
Perfect. My second question is more of an observation about the non-traditional completion. Statewide, I think we've been in an improvement plan for that for many years. We have not moved the needle in a significant way. Have you seen any strategies? Do you see anything in any districts where that number moves significantly? Because we're spending, I feel, a disproportionate amount of money in addressing that indicator with no real movement.
Never a significant change, because those are incremental, small changes over periods of time. But one thing that we believe will assist is they are releasing the new non-trad list soon. So at the Data Quality Institute, they're using that from the past census, and that's how they identify from census data. So they discussed waiting till the 2020 census, but instead of waiting for that plus additional time, they're going ahead and working on it on prelim data, and then they'll probably release close to the January mark. So prior to the submission of the plan, we should have additional on how that, because as your business and industry shifts, if you're basing it on old data, your workforce is already showing what changes have already happened, but you're using a resource to define that on something that's old.
Right.
So once that is done, then I think it will show more of the true reflection. We do have an increased number of males teaching. There are more males nursing. There are more girls because of all the coding initiatives, especially in Arkansas with computer science. So I think those changes, we'll start seeing those, but significant, that's hard to say for sure, but at least we should pick up some of those in addition to the alignment of the new release of the non-trad.
Sure. And at this meeting in August, we talked about the potential for points under Essa for those certifications and having a stronger presence for career and technical education. Where are we on that?
I definitely would rather that be, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? And I think that maybe Ms. Kaufman is going to answer on the next item is, you know, y'all have done lots of work on Perkins. Are there any things that are in Perkins that now we can incorporate into Essa? So leads right into you, Ms. Kaufman.
What a segue. So, from the very beginning of Essa, 4 years ago, we started having the conversation about any good plan is a plan due check,
Yes,
right?
right.
And so we should constantly be monitoring our plan, evaluating our plan to see if the things are working the way we want them to do. And that's exactly what I've talked to you earlier about, is all of those efforts to do that. But we recently received communication from the U.S. Department of Ed that said, hey, if you want to have any amendment to your plan ready for this next school year, you need to get it in January, so we've got time to review it. So with that knowledge, we then mapped out our timeline for what we would want to consider not for this next school year, but the following school year. So that's how far ahead we plan.
Okay.
So we've just kind of looked at our timeline and said, okay, these are big chunks of time. They're not times that we would start or stop a stopwatch on, but we would begin modeling the data. And so for your specific question about in our previous discussions with our stakeholders, we did talk about CTE classes. In fact, on page 49 of our Essa plan, if you recall in the School Quality and Student Success Indicator section, we gathered that feedback from the field, from all of our stakeholders about what would you like to see included in school quality and student success. And we got a lot of great feedback, but we had to put it into 3 categories, A, B, and C. A was what we could run data on and present to or include in our accountability system at present. And that's exactly what we did. In section B, it said then, we know we don't have the data for this now, but be working toward that. And so one of the items in section B is completers. And so if we follow this timeline, what we would do is we're now finishing up, we're modeling the data for making these decisions about Perkins 5, but then alongside that, we need to do some modeling for what would a completer be. And a completer might do 3 courses, like a concentrator would do 2 in a program of study. So is that an incentive? And that's what we've always tried to put in our school quality and student success indicators, not things that would be of compliance, but things that would stretch opportunities for our students. And so that's one of the items that we would like to come back to, is to come back to that list and say, what do we need to look at? What do we need to model? So I wanted to kind of open that up to you and say, as we begin this process of thinking about how we make our accountability system tighter, better, more reflective of what we value in the state of Arkansas, are there other things that you want us to work toward and kind of study? And the second part of that I'd like to say to you is how proud I am that we're in this shape. Because if you look at this timeline, we're not saying, oh, I like gray-haired, let's make that a priority in our accountability system. Instead, we're saying, hey, let's study the data on this and make a data-driven decision if that's a really good thing to include in our accountability system. Or maybe it's good information we want to know and we want to put it in our reporting system on the report card, but we're not yet ready to change our accountability system. So what a perfect place to be in. And so I ask you, as we think about concentrators and completers, that's certainly already on our list. What other things would you like for us to look at? And of course, we'll be going back out to the public and asking them that same question.
Okay. Any ideas that you wanted to share? Anyone? One comment, Ms. Kaufman, that I would like to make is and I hear this a lot from different educators around the state, is, you know, we've got several different indicators at that secondary level. You know, this would be another one that we could add at the secondary level. But at the elementary level, you know, theirs is almost entirely based on some type of test score, you know, variations of that. Are there any indicators that we could maybe put into, you know, if we're going to add another one at the secondary level, are there any other indicators that we could think about that would have an impact on students that might not be so tightly tied to a test score.
That's a great, let us study it.
Yeah, let's think about that. I know we talk about attendance and those types of things, but are there any others, that would maybe get at culture or that we might could add in an indicator in elementary level?
Okay, that's a great one. Let us study that and get back with you.
I think that I wanted to mull over a little bit.
Yeah, we need to mull it.
Okay.
See, there's still a criteria that that we have to meet.
Sure.
To make sure that it's fair and equitable across the state.
Right.
And so that would be the first thing is, do we have data? Do we have,
Right.
as Dr. Kremers are saying, do we have data that's certified?
Right.
And so we have to go through all of those.
I know, and that's that's the reason
we've got a checklist.
Elementary, because sometimes that's all we can get.
Absolutely.
Right.
But even if it's not something that we can put into an amendment for that in this cycle, it might be something that we want to work toward, 3 or 4 years down the road past that.
Right.
So I think
Right.
that's a great one.
Okay. Any other comments or suggestions? Okay, well, maybe that's something as a group that we want to think about also.
Yes.
And maybe get back with Ms. Kaufman at a later date after you've had time to think about it a little bit. Are there any indicators? And maybe go back and refresh your memory on those ABC indicators that are already in the Essa
Great.
plan also. So.
Page 49.
Okay.
I will, so January to April sounds like a long time, but when you start modeling data, it makes my friend Denise panic.
Sure.
So I would encourage your feedback, but I would encourage you not to hold on to it for a long time. If you're thinking about something, send us a note and let us start kind of thinking about it. I will tell you.
When would you like those comments or feedback by? When would you like the comments and feedback by for help with that?
As soon as you get them into an email and send them to us.
As you think it.
Yes, as you think it is exactly the right answer. So I'll tell you, we're very interested in this CTE component of getting that into the study to see how that fits. We've been interested in that quite some time. One of the other things that I just want to kind of throw out there that I am interested in is an alternative accountability. And very specifically, we've been thinking about it, we've been talking about it, we've been looking at how we might do it. We don't want an alternative accountability system that any way encourages bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want schools to listen to that and go, oh yeah, we're signing up for that. I'm not interested in doing that. What I am interested in is making sure that schools that need support are getting the support they need. And so what we're looking at is we're going back into the rules, our letter, the annual school recognition and school rating rules. And in our rules, we exempt some of our schools from letter grades. Specifically, open enrollment public charters whose mission and enrollment are primarily focused on students who have dropped out of high school or at risk of dropping out of high school. Conversion public charter schools whose mission and enrollment are focused on dropping out of high school or risk of dropping out. Adult charter schools, School for the Blind, School for the Deaf, and the Division of Youth Services. And so they are currently included in our federal accountability system. So they get an Essa school index and they go into all of the statistical analysis. But we don't include them at the state level when we assign a letter grade. And I'm okay with that. And it was isn't it ALEs? Yeah, that's the ALEs. So what we're going to study is what if we look at that grouping of schools, and we wouldn't have to decide who's in it because our already decided in law, state law, who that grouping would be. But we want to study what would happen if we made them their own category. And it wouldn't to remove them from any support. They would actually probably already qualify for the support, all of that, everything that goes with that. But what it would do is it would stop the skewing of our lowest 5% in high school. And so right now, we do not identify any school in high school as in need of additional targeted support for a subpopulation, because that 1% cut score for consistently underperformance is so low because of that skew that we do not identify a single high school as having underserved any subpopulation. And so if we write this out and test it, we think that it's not that we would do anything different, but for those schools that are identified, but instead we would now have services for schools that have not been identified.
So, see if I followed this, this would be for those groups, they would have this alternative assessment, and it would pull them out of the federal.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. They would still go through everything under federal will be exactly the same for these schools that are identified.
Okay.
What we're looking at is if in our statistical analysis, if they are pulled as a fourth, like right now we have elementary, middle, high school, if we pull them as a fourth category, this group of schools, that will cause our statistical report for high school to change.
Oh, okay.
Which will allow us to identify the high schools that need assistance serving subpopulations that they may not be equitably serving.
Okay.
And so, so really it doesn't change, it wouldn't change the support that these identified schools would get. Instead, what it would do is enable us to identify high schools that need our support that aren't being currently identified.
So you would actually be able to see the lowest 5% of actual high schools rather than seeing these schools that are serving alternative populations. Okay.
Skewing the data.
Okay, I got it now. Okay.
So we're going to test that. That idea kind of came up.
Well, we've noticed it in the data.
So we knew it was skewing, but the idea of, hey, why not think about accountability, alternative accountability that way, is just kind of like one of those, we've been trying 900 other ways, and somebody said, well, that, if you did this, I'm like, okay. We're going to write that down because that's really good.
Yeah, okay.
So.
I got it. All right.
So then would schools, alternative learning schools, separated out, would they all fall under this?
No, it would only be
I'm just afraid we're going to end up with a whole mishmash of, let's put this over here.
They would, everything would still apply to them that has always applied, and it only applies
Just
to
those few categories.
those few that are already identified in law would still, it would depend on how we wrote it up, and that's what we'll do is we'll research it to ensure we don't want them to relinquish any services that they are already being provided.
Right.
We just think we need to look at our data differently to provide services to some high schools that we're missing.
Okay.
All right, and my last thing then is to talk to you about planning for our next meeting. And Ms. Newton, with this timeline to plan for amendments and to study the data, we've kind of been meeting quarterly, but so we might want to think about, especially with what's going on with Perkins 5 and everything, about meeting end of February.
Okay. We'll do what you need, because what your plan sounds like you're right on track, so we don't want to hold you up.
So what I'm thinking is that by middle of, or the end of February, we will be pretty well almost finalized with Perkins, right? Yeah. Yeah, that'll give us just a good final, we can go back over it, make sure everybody knows what's in it.
Okay.
And it will give us a chance to start modeling some of this data and bringing it to you, and then kind of talking about our communication plan of getting out with our stakeholders.
Okay, so when are you?
The last Wednesday of February is the 26th.
Okay.
Does that date work for everyone?
Is that okay with everybody?
I probably would not make that.
You wouldn't be able to come?
I'll be out of town.
Okay. Got one that's gonna be out of town. Everybody else is gonna be okay? All right. I know it's hard to get everybody on any day, so we'll do the best we can. So, you wanna go with the 26th then at 9:30?
Yes.
Okay.
And is there anything else that you would like for us to prepare to talk about?
Maybe give us an update on some of the things that you're thinking about that might be possible indicators in the future. You know, that maybe you hopefully get some feedback from us between now and then, and maybe get some ideas of things that might work.
That'll also give you time to look at the report card and
Yeah.
give us feedback on that, and we'll have more information about kind of what's the consensus or kind of patterns that we're seeing as needs in our district support plans.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have something that you want us to be able to discuss in February? All right. Anything else you need from us, Ms. Kaufman?
That's it.
That's it? Okay, well, anyone else have a comment? All right, well, I'll take a motion to adjourn if that's,
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn until our next meeting.
all right. Second? Ms. Ema's second, and so we are adjourned.